Hey, Sergio.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi, Sergio.
Hey, Tammy.
Here we are at a beautiful campground in South Florida. Cheers.
Salud.
All right, well, we are on a camping route of the parks in South Florida. We just needed to get out and about and experience some new places. We are avid travelers, and being kind of quarantined at home for the last 5-6 months was too much for one of us anyway. And so Sergio did some amazing research, looking at different sites, and found us some parks to visit. So while we've been doing this, we're getting some questions from viewers about camping versus glamping. So when we started to talk about the subject and how we would treat it, Sergio said, well, why don't you, let's look it up. What's the difference between, what is glamping? So glamping is camping with luxurious accommodations. That's it, pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a tent on a rainy, soggy night, anything other than a tent's gonna feel luxurious to you. So maybe from that perspective, glamping for you would be anything but the tent you're in. Um, I don't know. From my perspective, our camper, it's a nice camper. Um, Glamping, yeah, I think you turn on your Nespresso machine in the morning to make coffee. That's kind of glamping. If you have marble countertops, that probably is glamping. If you have a wine chiller, not that I would oppose to having one of those. We don't have one of those, but that would be glamping.
That would be glamping.
But really, I mean, you know what? Whatever says luxury to you, if you want to go out in a camper and it speaks luxury to you, then go for it. You know, don't get hung up on the definitions. Whatever really makes you feel comfortable. The word out here is comfortable.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're comfortable in a tent, that's all the luxury you need. Then go for it. But you know, if you want to be able to enjoy that fine wine and
I don't know, for me, we've always cooked
that's
gourmet
true. I guess we
food.
always have had good wine.
We barbecue and have great menus.
Except on this park, it is not allowed to bring
Yes,
alcohol.
it's
So
not
we have
allowed.
not had any alcohol
No,
in this
we
park.
have not. Well, anyway, aside from the accommodations, some of the things that Sergio finds to be defined as glamping are things that make him comfortable. So there's a couple of other things. Air conditioning is one of the features that you may not get in a tent. Last week, though, at our last campground, we saw some people with brand new tents, and they had little tiny air conditioning units in a side entry, which I'm sure cooled that tent really, really well. So in Florida,
Yeah.
when it's hot and muggy, I think that's become almost an essential.
In fact, they said that it did. So you know that's an alternative nowadays. So you can there's some pretty good tents out there now. So
Also, having internet. I know that many people think about getting out into the wide open outdoors. You just want to dump all the internet and any connection to normal life. But we are here working during our adventure, so we needed to be able to plug in. So to have internet is another glamping feature.
well, there's attachments you can do. We bought a WeBoost tower, which amplifies the signal to the nearest cell tower. But in this campground, we have excellent internet access. So sometimes you may not need that depending on the place. There's also other attachments, you know, like for omnidirectional antennas that are not necessarily as expensive. If you call your internet provider, they actually will have suggestions about that, and they'll actually have suggestions about equipment you can buy even from them to amplify their signal. So there's suggestion out there. So you don't really have to be inhibited to where you go anymore because of internet access. I mean, you can get a lot of access everywhere.
Right. I think that, so whether you're glamping or camping, one of the hardest things about camping is the preparation. There is a lot that goes into it, and we want to share some of that with you because we want to encourage people. When I say hard, I don't want to discourage, but to give you some steps to take before you get started, and the most important ones. You're always going to need something else. There's no question, but that's kind of roughing it a little bit, right? If you want to call glamping roughing it. What are some of the things that you do to prepare for a camping trip, Sergio?
Well, I mean, the preparation is always a function also of what you're planning to do when you're going camping. If you are the type that really enjoys pulling up your $500,000 bus into the parking lot and you don't come out of it barely and then leave 5 days later, well, your preparation's not going to be that much. But we are very active when we go camping. So I have a kayak, I have a sailing canoe with the sailing gear for it, I have fishing gear, I have two bikes. Um, so all that stuff, you have to plan ahead and how you're going to transport that, especially if you're only bringing one car as your tow vehicle and nothing else. So um, then there is the supplies, provisions, water is going to take some space. You can't count on drinking the water from the campsites directly. I wouldn't do that. It's not. Some of them actually comes out brown and everything. So just bring your potable water, but if you're going to be for a week, that's probably a couple of cases, if not 3 cases, and water jugs and stuff.
Right. I want to share how we handle the supply list. So after our first couple of camping trips, I will admit to you, the first time I went with Sergio, he was an avid camper. I hadn't camped since I was a kid. And I felt a little helpless because he was doing everything and I just didn't know where I could fit into the process. So after that first trip, we created...
I think I packed you up also,
you
put in a corner.
No, I remember I sat in the car with the air conditioning on because it was already dusk and the bugs were biting while he did the camp setup. That was before we had this camper. We had a pop-out, which they call different than a pop-up. And so we created a list, and it has grown. As of today, it's a 4-page list, 2 pages for food, 2 pages for supplies. And as we start packing up a couple of days before we go, we put the list on the table in the dining room, and as each one of us then packs that day, we check it off. That way we know we've got everything that we chose to bring on the trip, as well as I don't have to ask him, did you pack the water? What about the Tivas? Did you bring hats and sunscreen, etc., right? So we just check off as we pack.
Cooking utensils, batteries, and the thing is that if you have a camper, if you don't have doubles for everything, I mean, the best thing is if you could buy things separately and keep them dedicated to your camper. The smaller your list will be, but even then, things like batteries, etc., if you just went out last year, those have to be replenished. Batteries for the smoke detector, for the carbon monoxide detector, gas to be replenished, propane gas. I just a lot of things to think about, and if you don't have it on a list, you're going to forget something.
Right.
Our list is so good that SpaceX actually wrote us. They said they wanted to get a copy of it, and
For the launch.
yeah,
Really?
we sold. Yeah, I sold it to them.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to share it with
We have a pretty good
with our viewers
stash in
after
savings
the
now.
video. If you're interested in that list of ours, we'd happy to share it with you. But you have to remember the essentials: water, food, clothing. If you're going to, even in the camper, let's talk a little bit about the kind of the mechanics of being in a camper versus a tent for cleaning, showers, bathroom. When you're in a tent, there's always the campground facility that you're able to use, and in a camper we have facilities inside. I'm going to let Sergio tell you about how we monitor and measure those facilities and what each of those are all about.
Well, when you're in a tent, you just wait until it rains, and that's your shower, and takes care of cleaning everything too. So, but if you're in a camper, you will have you'll have three water supplies or three water depositories in the camper, tanks, so to speak. So one would be your fresh water tank, so you can actually take fresh water with you. I'd recommend you drop a little bit of bleach in there along with the water. So it's, if you want to have potable water,
And what would that? Where would that be? Freshwater? We don't do that.
you'd have to do it before you leave, from home or something. Just fill up your tank in your camper. Don't fill it up at the
I see.
campsite.
Okay.
Then the next kind of tank, and I'm gonna mention them in order of stinkiness and nastiness. So the next one is called the gray water tank, and that gray water tank is when you wash dishes, when you take showers in the camper, when you use the sinks for washing your hands, etc. That all goes into one tank, and it's gonna be soapy water, but it's gonna have some remnants of food and stuff. So after 3 or 4 days, that gets pretty grungy in there. So. But nowhere near as grungy as the third kind of tank, which is the black water tank. Now that one, I don't really have to expand too much on what the black water why the black water is
I
called
think
the
they
black
can use
water.
their imagination. So
Yeah.
it's all from the
It's
commode,
all the toilet.
the
So,
toilet.
And you put more chemicals on that one, so that it eats up that stuff, and it will all be liquidy. Now, one note about the black water tank: they sell toilet paper that's biodegradable. You definitely want to use that kind in there. You don't want to be cleaning a plug inside that tank when it comes time to drain it. All the tanks require you to put some water in them first with liquid, so that as you put the first things that go in there, they're not falling into a dry tank, because then you get like crustiness in there, and that won't come out when you flush the tank. So, while speaking of the black water tank, you'll see there's like a little valve that allows the stuff to go in and out of that tank. So always want to keep a little bit of water in there, keep that wet, because if that gets brittle, dry, and breaks, then there'll be a hole that you're staring at, which is basically where your doo-doo goes. So that will fill up the camper with a nasty smell, and all that's protecting you from that is that little ring.
Okay, well, I am so glad that is one of your duties, Sergio.
That's right.
And no pun intended. We kind of split our responsibilities too. Like Sergio takes care of the mechanical things.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Those tanks will fill up mighty quick. So if you take a shower like you take a shower at home, for instance, in our camper, the capacity of our tank is pretty much 20 gallons. You'd be surprised how quickly you fill up on 20 gallons. So your showers have to be different. You're
going to take like a bird bath. You wet yourself with the shower head, turn it off, soap up, turn it back on to rinse, quickly turn it off. I personally, generally, even though we have this nice bathroom in here, if the local facility is nice, and so many of them are, I bring my items to the provided shower here, the shower house. Of course, I wear flip-flops on my feet.
and that's in the checklist, because there was a time we forgot our shower flip-flops, and so that's pretty grungy when you go in
Yeah.
there.
So I take the shower here, so we don't have to, because if our tank, and so I wanted to say that even though Sergio's looking at things from underneath, there's a dashboard inside the camper that has lights, and you're able to press the light for the gray tank and for the black tank, and we can measure where we're at in capacity. And we kind of want to make it through the whole week without filling up completely. On the day that we leave, we empty out. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Now,
Because we have a whole-
not all campsites are that way. There are campsites that have dump out at each campsite, and that's cool, because then you can connect a hose from those tanks right into the ground. Into the tank in the ground for the
So
campsite.
in other words, when you pull in, we have an electric source here, we have a water source, which is not potable, and we hook that up to our camper. So that gives us running water for dishes, for the toilet, for the shower, and the electric. But what Sergio was saying, in addition, some campgrounds have another hole,
Hookup, yeah.
a hookup where you take a tube right from the bathroom into the hole. So let's
Yeah.
get off this subject for a minute.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about, we started talking about planning. We do plan the menus out so that we are very specific about what we bring. Our refrigerator works great, and there's a little freezer. It's just not really large. So we sometimes have to add to the capacity in the refrigerator with a cooler. And so we keep that iced, and a really good cooler will stay cold with replenishing the ice maybe every 2 to 3 days. And you have to monitor that. So sometimes we're shifting things back and forth between the car and the camper. One of the other things that you have to keep up on when you're camping is sweeping. Because we're out here, it's dusty, it's dirty, it's sandy. We have a nice rug. I'm not sure you can see it from here, but we put a rug out in front of the front door so that we can take our shoes off, wipe our feet, but inevitably it gets pretty dusty inside. So we're either sweeping the inside to the outside, and then we're sweeping the rug outside to keep it so your feet don't feel grungy. Yeah.
And it really, the idea of keeping it clean outside is so that you, as much as possible, prevent the tracking of all that dirt into the camper, which is really easy to do. And also recommend that instead of using a piece of old carpet or whatever, there's carpets that are designed specifically for outdoor use, that allow water and dirt to filter right through them, and they're a heck of a lot easier to keep clean. And so that's what I would recommend. You find it in the camping store. And
Let's talk about safety a little bit,
Okay.
Sergio.
I thought there was something. Oh yeah, a trick you can use if you're in a sandy place. Put a bucket of water right in front, and then fold a towel right at the entrance of the camper. And so when you're coming with all your sandy feet, you stick them in the bucket. All the sand falls up, and then you just tap on the towel, and you can come in with clean feet. So that's a good trick
Yeah.
for. I've used it in tents a lot too, because tents get
That's a great idea.
really dirty really quick. So.
Yeah, I love that. Well, what do people have to be concerned about when it comes to safety while they're camping? Can you think of anything?
Oh yeah, plenty, because I'm a safety guy, of course. So, the first thing is weather. You should learn a little bit about weather, because sometimes in these campsites, you may not have good reception. You're not seeing, you don't have cable. You're not listening to your TV. So you should learn from your phone, have ways of getting the weather. When it comes to weather, at least here where we live, fronts can come in at a pretty good clip, weather fronts, and your first indication will be the clouds building, and immediately the winds building, and if you're not ready, you'll be caught with all kinds of things in the open, shoes that will get wet, awnings that have not been retracted and will be damaged by the strong winds. I mean, winds for some of these storms can be upwards 40, 50 miles an hour, so we have been in a campsite when we saw somebody's awning peeled off from their camper and totally flipped over, and that can damage things on top of the camper, like your AC unit and all that other stuff. So an ounce of prevention is definitely worth whatever, a pound.
Right. And what apps do you use to watch the weather? Because you get more detailed than
right.
just weather.
Well, I go to because I'm a pilot. I go to Aviation Weather Center, and I can see. But any app where you can look at a real-time radar feed, understanding that those radar feeds typically are lagging about 15 minutes or so from the real picture. Make sure you look at that, and if you see a line, be aware of where you are in that little map, because sometimes you don't know if you are. So you understand where you're at and see where the weather's coming from, and give yourself a good 20-30 minutes ahead of any line of weather coming to secure your camp, and retract awnings, and secure loose objects that will go flying, and the things that you care about that you don't want damaged in the storm.
We also have a first aid kit. We have 2 fire extinguishers inside. We have a smoke detector, a carbon monoxide detector. Sergio talked about having batteries. Make sure you have backups for all of those things.
Another thing that we have added as of late here, which is pretty cool, is you can buy little walkie-talkies, real cheap, and if Tammy goes to the bathroom at night, or I go somewhere, it's nice to keep those on hand, because you never know. Some of these campsites can be in the middle of the week. A lot of people leave, and it might be just you and another couple in the whole campsite. So it's not just that somebody might do something. I mean, there's animals. I mean, we are in nature, right? So
Right.
if something happened, it's good to be able to call right away. So little
Right.
walkie-talkies are great.
Always have something. Even if you don't have a walkie-talkie, bring your phone with you all the time. Not only for safety, but for great pictures. Every time I forget my phone, I see wildlife. We also make sure that our air in the tires, the car,
Tires.
the camper is
Yeah.
filled before we go.
So tires are a good. I'm not gonna take too long, but I've had a bad experience with them. So, I back when I was inexperienced, I had a camper. I let the tires go a long time, and it was a single axle camper. When that tire blew, it took out the entire. It doesn't just blow the tire; it took out the entire wheel well. And as it did that, it ripped up the gas line that was going back to the propane. So when I got out of the cab of the truck to inspect, I was smelling propane gas just coming out full blast from the line. So just bad stuff, right? So it pays to definitely replace your tires. And the problem with them is that, yeah, you won't be putting in the miles, but the years go by. The trailer's not moving, so you get a flat spot on the ground, and UV from the sun damages the tires. So if you don't put a cover on them and you rotate the camper every once in a while, every 6 months or something to keep a rut from forming, then the tires will go bad in a couple, 2 or 3 years, and you need to replace them because you don't want to find out going down the highway at 60 mile an hour. I mean, yeah.
And true, when we are towing the camper in our car, we do go slower than normal because you have all these extra weights on you. What could we tell people about, let's say they're thinking about camping and they want to know what kinds of things they need to do to get started, like what kind of car, what kind of experience, and what kind of knowledge would they need to know how to tow a camper with their car?
Yeah, the first thing that I would say is establish whether you are a true super nature guy, where, because part of your experience is I want to be on a tent, right? Because you want to be intimate with, I don't know, you want to hear the little spiders crawling inside the tent, or outside and look at them, or see the little legs of the birds as they step on your tent. There's all kinds of reasons why you may prefer a tent. So, but if you want that air conditioning, you're gonna want to be making a move to at least a pop-up camper, pop-up or pop-out, I call them. Pop-up, the roof comes up and all the canvas comes out and beds and stuff, or a pop-out is, you have a center camper that already has a roof with a hard roof top with your air conditioning and everything, and then the sides pop out, and those are like your beds under canvas.
Those are much more reasonably priced than.
They're much more reasonably priced than the full length camper. I would say to somebody just getting into it, make first the distinction of whether you want a tent or camper. Those are really two different worlds. Once you make that distinction, then I would say start small. The smallest that you can, because you're going to gain experience. So it's the same thing like with boats. So start small, just because it's going to be more affordable, and you can get out there and you can start experiencing nature and experiencing camping, and you'll get a better sense of what you want to do. So a great first investment is like a little pop-up camper. You got to be aware of how much you can tow with your vehicle. So your vehicle has a towing capacity, and you have to be aware of how much tongue weight your vehicle can handle.
Tongue weight. And you know what, Sergio? I know you're going to think I'm interrupting you, but there is a spider crawling on you right now, and you love them so much that I'm going to get him off.
But
it's gone.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Right.
Yeah. So there we
see
go.
It? You see it back there?
Live in action. No, he's totally gone. I saw him fly.
Fly. Yeah, spiders fly.
So the tongue weight on the car is, what does that mean?
So this is the car. This is the trailer. When you put it on the hitch, tongue weight is the vertical force, how much this right here weighs. So it's a question, you have to answer two questions. Can my car tow the whole weight, but can the back of the car and the suspension handle the weight that the camper or the pop-up puts on it? So that's why if you start small, you might be able to, there are 4-cylinder cars that can pull a small pop-up, no problem. The tongue weight will be very low, and the towing capacity will also be pretty low.
That's a good thing we rolled up our canopy, right? This wind is picking up. Well, in addition, they would need a tow package on their vehicle. So we bought the last car with a tow package on it. You could also buy one separately and have it installed by a mechanic, and it's in the neighborhood of around $700-800, or at least it was 5 years ago when we did that.
Yeah, it's all a function of what your towing capacity is going to be. As you keep going up in weight, then other considerations start coming in. if you're crossing that 4 or 5 thousand pound threshold, like, which is what a camper weighs, then your transmission fluid's gonna get hot. So you're gonna need an additional cooler for that transmission fluid, likely installed in your vehicle. You're gonna likely also be upgrading to a hitch that can handle some stabilizer bars, which distribute the load where it goes, instead of just resting on the hitch. You have bars that distribute the load of that weight across the whole front of your trailer. And on top of it, there's the potential to jackknife if you slam on the brakes. So in order to prevent that, you will install um, electric brakes that with a brake controller that hooks onto your brake pedal on the vehicle. So that's in fact, for bigger campers, they come wired with that, and they come with their electric brakes, and it would be legal to take them on the road without the you certainly don't expect to be covered by your insurance if you jackknife and you didn't have electric brakes enabled and installed.
There's one other system that I can think of right now. Thanks for that. And that is, how we cook. How do we cook here in our camper?
We have options. I mean, we have our two propane tanks up in front. They're great. They last for a long time. I have two, and one of them can last for 2 weeks.
Full size, like the kind you would put on a home barbecue.
That's right. And those operate your stove inside, which has a range, and it has an oven, right? Chocolate chip cookies. And we also have a grill on the outside, all for barbecuing. It's attached to the back of the camper. Many campers have that. So.
And it's a gas grill.
Yeah, and then you have a series of valves, so you want to shut off gas when you're not using it.
That makes sense.
Oh, and then ours also has a microwave, right? So microwave is pretty nice. So
Right.
maybe that's part of the glamping part.
Sergio, if somebody was going on a camping trip, what maybe 3 to 5 tools would you say you can't camp without?
I mean, you always need to have. What I would recommend is go to the store, and they have a basic tool set. But any store that will have a complimentary set of pliers, screwdrivers, ratchet, sockets. If you have a tent or a canopy, then you'll be driving stakes into the ground. So a plastic hammer, one of those that you use to pound those stakes in.
How about a can opener?
You know what? The tool.
Can opener,
well,
bottle opener.
Right. I mean, and a broom. I mean, we actually have 2 brooms. We keep one broom outside for all the dirt stuff outside, and then one for inside the camper. So we use that a lot. And one thing when we're talking about brooms, it's not a tool, but something I definitely use is home defense, that liquid, for bugs, because they'll want to come into your camper. So as soon as we set up camp, I go around and I spray that around the legs of the camper, around the carpets. Yesterday we had an ant invasion, so with that liquid I stopped it. I haven't seen any ants come back after that. So, and hornet spray. Invariably, just about half the time, I will go to connect the camper at a new site, and when I open the box, there's a hornet's nest right there. They love that.
Right.
So don't get stung the very first day of your beautiful camping experience. Bring the can of hornet spray with you.
Right. And you know what, if you're brand new to this, I guess Sergio gave some advice earlier about starting small. I would recommend that if you have some friends who camp, go along with them for the first time. See if you really like it. And then if you do, then you have an easier decision to make moving forward. Sergio, what are your greatest pleasures when camping?
Oh, definitely sitting down and being interviewed. I think that is the best thing ever. But besides that, my favorite time is sitting at sunset, watching a beautiful view like what we have here, and firing up, get some wood, throw some charcoal fluid on it, and start a fire. And in a matter of 30 seconds, you have a beautiful fire, and then you're just relaxing, listening to the sounds of nature, and maybe get a nice cigar, my pipe, and just let time stop still. I mean, come still. That's it's the perfect moment to relax. That's when I get away from it all.
Yes, I'm feeling some kind of discovery about myself from camping. I'm very social, so it's surprising to me that what I love is the solitude, to just be. Um, there's nobody around. It's quiet. I really enjoy that. And my all-time favorite are the unexpected animal encounters. And tomorrow we're heading out to a new place because we met some locals yesterday and we found out that there are like hundreds of alligators that we're never gonna walk away having missed them. There is one little guy that lives right over here. We've been seeing him in the mornings, but I want to see more. So we're gonna head out tomorrow and check out a new location, and we'll share that with you guys later. So thanks for joining us today. We hope that we were able to help you learn more about camping and glamping, what the differences are, and help you identify your style.
All right. Enjoy. Great outdoors.
We need that much at the end because we have to cut it. So, all right, babe. Oh my gosh, I hope that recorded.
God.
All right, let's see. If it didn't,